I'm going to use that quote very quickly,
You,
in just not to interrupt, but,
yeah.
having worked with a lot of schools and PTAs, a lot of the PTAs say, can we run a survey? And I'm like, we can run a survey, but here's the thing. You and my team and your team, we really know probably a good way to get going, but let's do some surveys. And I have found, to quote somebody I know very well, surveys suck.
Yeah, well, it's because the first thing that happens is you as a survey respondent are running through your head instantly. How do I want to answer? What role am I going to play in that survey? What role do I take? Do I take an authentic role? Or am I just going to I don't care. They're paying me, or I'm going to mess with them. I'm going to answer in a completely different way just to have fun.
Or I'm
And
at a red
so,
light. I got 15 seconds.
okay, pop out my phone, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Here's fine. You got your survey. Well, today I get the right to play the marriage game again tomorrow. How about parenting, Josh? Did you win the dad game yesterday?
My wife and my daughter are over there. So I guess
Yes, you
I
won
live to
yesterday.
play another day.
You get to play another day. Now, I don't want to be morbid, but I have to be kind of full circle. We keep playing the marriage game until it becomes boring. And when the marriage game becomes boring, what happens?
The game is over.
The game is over. We get a divorce. Right. And so when you say lifelong learning, which is just such a brilliant name for a show, you cannot have a better name than lifelong learning, because what we know about finite games and serious games is that you can play a finite game in the context of a serious game because it can advance and perpetuate play. So Josh and I, or Jackie, you might take a vacation with your family. That vacation is a finite game. It has a start and an end, and it has a certain set of interactions, but it perpetuates the infinite game, because a vacation with your family is a chance to recharge. It's a chance to share love. It's a chance to spend time together. Just like Jenna and I play Scrabble. I mean, why do we play Scrabble? It's because we want to be together. We want to have that opportunity to be together and not stress about the kids, not stress about finances, not stress about our house, just have time together. There's not right or wrong here. It's about understanding yourself. Now, hooking in what Josh talked about, we know that when you're talking about life skills precede your education. Meaning financial literacy and civics start the moment you're born, because you're born into a family unit, however you define that family unit. And if you look at the research of financial literacy development, the first financial literacy event is around the age of 2, and it's a request for an item. Mommy, daddy, I want cereal, fruit, something to eat at the store. Around the age 4, we have one of the next really clearly defined financial events, which is called an assisted purchase. Josh is at the store. His daughter's with him. She's 4 years old. He's trying to give her something to do to keep her occupied. And he has this epiphany. Wait, I'm going to give my daughter $10, and my daughter is going to help me buy the groceries. Now, what he actually is doing is he's saving his poor parental brain from overload, because he's got his kid doing something. And what the kid is actually doing is realizing, wait, there's this thing called money, and I give money to this person and I get something. And dad gets money, but I don't know how dad gets money. But dad gets money. Mom gets money. How does mom get money? Mom has a job. Mom's been talking about her job. Is that how mom gets money? So by the time the kid goes into school in kindergarten, first grade, they've accumulated a non-trivial amount of financial literacy. So one of the things we know is, if I want to improve financial literacy, if I want to help our children make better choices, I cannot only work in the school. I have to have something that works in the home.
And I find something new about him all the time, where he's worked, where he's lived. And I think and I always come, from the entrepreneur side of things here, is let's hear about the entrepreneur. So we could play a game. Where has Luke worked? In what continent? With what company? He's the father of what? So can we hear a little bit about his travels?
Sure. It's funny, Josh. You know me well enough now, and for the listeners, Josh and I are working together on a couple of different endeavors, and he knows that sometimes I feel a little awkward talking about myself like that because I'm a future-oriented person, and I think our past is something that gives us a foundation, but it doesn't. You should never let your past define you. It can inform you, and it can give you a foundation. But where has Luke worked? Well, I'll take that as a few companies. I started working for a few smaller companies doing programming and other kinds of things. I date myself when I say I actually programmed on a TRS model Radio Shack computer in BASIC, building vocational educational software tracking for Michigan. Then I went into a couple of other companies and I landed my first, I would say, kind of real job at Electronic Data Systems. I worked at EDS for 10 years. I started very humbly. In large data centers, there's people who cable the computers. So when you see those pictures of computers on TV about data centers and you see all those neat wires, you have to wonder, well, where do those wires go? Well, they drop down into the floor and they are routed through the floor. And the floor is called raised floor because there's a cement foundation and then there's flooring. I was a floor grub. And a floor grub is a person who goes underneath the floor to cable up the computers. So most people say they work their way from the ground up. I could say that I truly worked my way from beneath the ground up. I spent 10 years at EDS. It was fantastic. It was amazing. The company was just wonderful. And about lifelong learning. And I love the lifelong learning of this podcast because one of the lifelong learning lessons was I spent 10 years at EDS, but I had 10 different jobs. At least, because they allowed me to move around. So if a young person is going to take a job at a big company, they should use it as a lifelong learning experience. What are you learning? How are you growing? What are you doing to advance your career? From EDS, I went to my first startup, and that was in Dallas, a company called Object Space, where I ran the training division. So I've spent a lot of time building educational courseware and materials for adults. My background is really teaching adults. I've stopped counting at 25,000 adults, the number of adults who have been in teaching over my career. So it's a lot. From Object Space, I moved to the Bay Area to join my first Bay Area startup, a company called Origin Systems. We built the world's first data warehouse for patent data. So as the head of engineering and product management there. From there, I started my own company. It failed. It's okay. Yeah, we've all had that happen. That's okay. Lots of learning there. Like Scrabble and Chutes and Ladders. And then there's serious games. And a serious game is a game in which the outcome materially matters to the producers, the people who invoke to play, or the participants, or both. So now we can look at, well, what games do you find fun? Because a game isn't fun. A game has a relationship to its players. So as a parent, when my kids were young, we played Chutes and Ladders or Snakes and Ladders, depending on the country. That game is no longer fun because there's very little strategy. You roll the thing, you move, right? But you're teaching your child very fundamental elements of future gameplay, turn taking, winning, losing, chance, the role of randomness, the role of not randomness. What does it mean to cheat when you move when you move the spinner to a number so the child wins, etc. But eventually, that game becomes boring. And one of the great game theorists is Jane McGonigal, and in her book Reality is Broken, she talks about we play a game until it becomes boring. And the best games, the games that we revere, if you will, have stayed interesting for years and years and years.